Good evening. My name is Sarah Howard. I'm the Youth and Community Services here at the Daniel Boone Regional Library. We're hoping you're doing well this evening, and thank you for joining us. Today, we have Catherine Miller back with us. She's the program coordinator for the Triple P program, and that's part of the Boone County Early Childhood Coalition. And this evening, she's going to be talking to us about parent bonding and understanding the boundaries between yourself and your children and parent versus friend to your children. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. And in the chat, I will put up some things that will be helpful, including next month's workshop. So take it away. Take away, Catherine. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Hi, guys. As Sarah said, I'm Catherine Miller, and I do lead the Triple P program, which is funded by the Boone County Children's Services Board. And tonight we're going to talk about raising some resilient children, and then we'll move into talking about, how to parent and still be friendly with our children and set boundaries and limits with our children. So we'll just kind of jump right into it. So, raising resilient children. We want children to be able to have emotional resilience. We want them to be able to bounce back, to work through things, and to understand that, not so good things happen to children, but there's ways that we can help them through it and help them adapt to it. This is very good. A topic for the pandemic, right? This has been a very hard year for many adults as well as children. I've seen a lot of parents who have struggled setting limits, been setting boundaries with their children. There's a lot of parents who said, I didn't sign up to be a 24/7 parent. So a lot of kids were home doing homeschool. And, they just never really left the house. And that was hard on lots of parents who, didn't get a break, did never have their children outside of the house other than, if they left to go to the store or if they left to do something. But some parents weren't even leaving to go to the store doing anything. So, it's a dose of having your kids all the time and no real breaks. And that can be stressful for many people. So let's kind of talk about what's your emotional resilience. Let me move my slide. So emotional resilience in children, we'll talk about that. We'll look at some of the building blocks for successes, some take-home messages, and then we'll have some questions if there is any that anybody has. So emotional resilience is the ability to recognize, understand, and accept the feelings, express our feelings in appropriate ways, face and resolve difficult situations, and cope with stressful or upsetting situations. These abilities are related to a child's development. So let's talk about that. Recognize, understand, and accept feelings. What's really important is to help children understand what feelings and emotions they have. Oftentimes we teach things like happy, sad, angry, upset, but we don't teach things like embarrassed or confused, maybe, like words that we may use with them, but we don't really teach them the meaning of that. It's almost like children gather the meaning because we say, you look confused, you must be embarrassed, and then they put the situation to it, but we don't necessarily teach them those words. So sometimes there can be a misconception of what it really means until there is complete understanding. And then being able to accept those feelings. So sometimes we may inappropriate label a child. So, if they fell outside and everyone starts laughing and they get up and start pushing everyone who laughed, we may say, you were really angry at everybody, when in fact, they were actually really embarrassed about what happened. And that was their initial feeling. And so because people laughed, they pushed those people. And so we made them think that that was an angry situation versus an embarrassed situation. So that's an example of maybe how we confuse feelings. We want our kids to express their feelings in appropriate ways. So what's really important about this is children do need to be able to express their feelings, but it's not appropriate for them to be yelling at you about those feelings. It's not appropriate for them to be in your face when they're trying to tell you how they feel about a situation. And it's not appropriate for them to cuss you out or talk to you in a disrespectful manner. So we have to be able to teach children how to express their feelings in an appropriate way. And I'll even add at an appropriate time, right? So we'll kind of look at the spectrum of age, and we'll really hit towards the end on that tween teen age. and really talk about expressing feelings in appropriate ways. It's important for children to be able to face and resolve difficult situations. Sometimes, maybe a situation about bullying at school, and you're not going to be there. So how can you help them through that difficult situation? Kids may have switched schools and, they don't have friends at this new school. So how are they going to face that? How are they going to be able to make friends? What's going to happen? And also being able to cope with stressful or upsetting situations. So some of these things can all roll together. But that's kind of what emotional resilience is. All right. Okay, so why is it important? So children need to learn how to cope with everyday feelings in those difficult situations. Some children experience very stressful life events, and the ability to cope with feelings is related to their social skills and those relationships that they've built, their tolerance and their compassion, being able to cope with life experience, and then the prevention of emotional problems, right? So when we look at that last line, we're looking at how they take a situation, how they work through it, or a lack of working through it, and what might happen when they don't work through those emotions, and then we end up with emotional problems. So emotionally resilient children are usually caring and they're socially skilled. They're empathetic to their friends and they're sensitive. They're able to manage their feelings. They're able to cope with stress and unpleasant experience, and they're less likely to resort in unhelpful ways of coping. And we'll talk a little more about some unhelpful ways of coping as we get through this. So we'll look at some of these building blocks. Again, recognizing and accepting feelings, being able to express them appropriately, building a positive outlook, developing coping skills, dealing with negative feelings, and dealing with stressful life events. So those are kind of the building blocks for being able to raise resilient children. Sorry about that. So our first one, recognizing and accepting feelings. So children, looking at things, we must always look at children and making sure that we are developmentally looking at them in the way they should be. So, are we thinking about them responding age appropriately? So if we're thinking about how a 7-year-old might respond, they're going to respond differently than your 10-year-old or your 12-year-old might respond. So, making sure that we are thinking about age appropriateness. So we want to help children become aware of different feelings. So we kind of talked about that a little bit. Littles learn that happy, sad, angry, those kind of feelings. And then we develop into more complex feelings. And they need to learn those words to describe those feelings and develop it to be able to develop those more complex feelings. So these changes are related to their language, how they think, and the experiences they have. The experiences they have are important because that's how we tie those words together. That's how we say, you're feeling embarrassed, you're feeling confused, you're feeling anxious, right? So we're tying those experiences to the words and letting them be able to interchange that. So, oh yes, I remember this experience. I felt this way. I learned that meant this. So I was feeling anxious. I have that same feeling again. Oh, I must be feeling anxious again. So hopefully that makes sense of how we're talking about developing those complex feelings, understanding them, and then being able to pull them back and use them again. So what can parents do? So one of the main things you need to do is understand that there are going to be ups and downs, and that's normal, right? So we all have good days and we have not so good days. One of the things that we need to do is learn to talk about our feelings. So although this isn't a new concept, in some families it may be new, right? So many children were taught to stay in a child's place. You don't contradict or question adults. You don't talk about your feelings. You accept what the adult says to you and move on, right? You don't have those conversations about how you're feeling or what you're thinking. So this could be new in some families and some cultures. So being able to be emotionally expressive. So talk about how you're feeling, being able to find the right words to express how you're feeling. And then share feelings appropriately, right? So there are feelings that we should be able to share with our friends, or maybe, how you're feeling in a class and discussing that. You might not talk about your feelings on certain things that you talk about at home. That may not be appropriate to talk about with friends. So making sure we're helping our kids understand the appropriateness. And then help the child recognize and name emotions and encourage your child to be emotionally expressive, right? So give them space to be able to tell you how they're feeling. Give them encouragement to say the things that are on their mind while teaching them how to do that respectfully. Making sure that you set the boundaries on how that can be done. When we're in a heated um, discussion, it may not be the time to encourage them to express their feelings if you don't feel like they're at a space that they can do it appropriately. It may be that we say, hey, we're going to take 10 minutes to calm ourselves down. And then we're going to come back and talk about this situation. And I want to hear your side of it. I want to understand how you're feeling about it. But right now, I know we're both really heated and it's not a good time to have that discussion. So those are a few things that we can do as parents. So let's talk about expressing feelings appropriately. What emotion expression is okay? So we're talking about our words, our expressions, and our actions, right? So those are the things that we are able to do. We don't want to talk about it's okay to hit things or hurt things, whether that's people, pets, our environment. So, it's not okay to just go get a hammer and beat on the tree, right? Because that may damage the tree. So, those aren't appropriate ways to express ourselves. And then we want to talk about when is a good time to express our feelings and to who, how often, and how much. And then what emotional expression is not okay. And then thinking about those family and cultural expectations. I kind of hit on that a minute ago, but making sure that we keep that in mind. And if you're a provider on and watching this, that's really important to help children understand their family and cultural expectations. You don't want to encourage a child to do something that their family might say is disrespectful, right? So talking to them, how do people share their feelings in your family? What kind of ways are acceptable? So asking them that and then helping them to be able to gather the words to express that is far better than just saying, well, here's what you should do, because that may not be acceptable in their family culture. So what kind of traps do we get into parents? So this kind of I'm going to talk to this part about, I'm going to talk about our littles, but then I'm really going to talk to you guys about our tweens and teens. So talking too much about our own feelings. So, this can be an issue when we don't give children a space to talk, because you're saying, this is how you made me feel. This is how you always make the house feel. We're talking too much about our own feelings about the situation and not giving our child a chance to express their feelings. Maybe we're dwelling on our upsetting events. So we're constantly bringing up the past to them. We never give them a chance to be able to move on for that. Perhaps you're showing too much interest in feelings, right? You're constantly asking them about how they're feeling and saying things like, are you depressed? Are you anxious? Are you feeling this way? And really hovering over them to the point that they decide they're not going to talk to you at all because you're doing too much to them. Being overly sympathetic or encouraging avoidance, right? Saying to them, like, this is a situation you really want to deal with. It'll just blow over, right? So encourage them not to have, to not deal with the situation. And then you may overreact to a minor situation, which would make your kid not want to come and talk to you again. And then not giving enough attention to other behaviors. So let's kind of break that piece down. So not giving enough attention to other behaviors. Now, in our little kids, we really want to focus on the good and the praising versus really talking about getting onto them about the things they're not doing correctly, right? We want to praise and give attention to the behaviors we want to see. And we want to try to ignore, if we can, the behaviors we don't want for them to continue doing. So let's talk about our tweens and our teens in this situation. When we talk about talking too much about our own feelings. So sometimes the parents will get into a rut and start talking about themselves to their teenagers, right? they have decided that their teens are on an equal level of them. And, now we're friends. And so I'm going to talk about my relationships with you. I'm going to talk about the struggles I'm having with my significant other. I'm going to bring you into an adult world. The problem with that is, yes, you may be building a bond, but you also are taking yourself into a friend's level. And it's really hard to discipline when your child starts to see you as their equal or their friend. So making sure that even though you're willing to share things with them, and there's a difference saying, when I was in a relationship, I had some similar concerns, or I felt the way you did my first breakup. That's completely different than you're talking about the guy you're with right now and whatever drama that may be going on. That's completely different. So making sure you can distinguish to the two of them. The showing too much interest and feelings. So right now, when we're talking about that tween and teens, they're really at a point where they're looking for space and independence. So you might see them in their room a lot. They may have their door shut often. They may not want to engage in things. And so you may really be concerned that they're depressed or that something's going on with them. It's better just to have a regular check-in with them. So maybe at dinner, everyone sits around the table and you ask about how your day is. I really encourage, as long as a child can have a discussion, talking about two good things that went well in the day and something that you wish went better. And we say we wish went better because we don't want to say what went wrong in your day, because we don't want to focus on that. We want to come from an angle of, if something didn't go well, how do you wish it would have went? So that helps them to start discussing it with you in a manner of being proactive versus reactive. But, understanding that kids at this age do want independence. In a world of technology, they may be interacting with their friends, but it's through FaceTime or Duo, or they're online with each other and having conversations. I have teens, and I have a teen that often in their room with their door shut, but I can hear her laughing and engaging with her friends. She just shuts her door all the time. It used to bother me because I thought, oh my gosh, what is she hiding? What are they talking about? But I know now, because I've been interactive with her. Sometimes I pop in and I hop on FaceTime. I'm like, hey, what's going on? Who are you talking to? I invite myself into it so that they know, I am checking. I do care. I want to know what's going on with your life. But I'm not busting in our door every 10 minutes and asking, what are you doing? Who are you talking to? What's going on? Right. So it's that respect and that giving that independence, because they are going to grow into adults, and you want to feed that independence so that they don't feel like they need to be entertained by you. Right. So we were just talking about that tween teen stage, but if we go back to that, age where they can't do anything by themselves, they're constantly in your face because they want you to entertain them. Right. So they haven't learned how to be independent because maybe you have structured their day so much and every minute of their life is scheduled that they don't know what to do by themselves, right? So they're constantly by you. They're constantly, we're like, what are we doing next? And you say, go play. And they're like, I'm really confused. You go play what? What should I go play? What should I go do? Because their day has been structured that much, or they haven't been given that independence to be able to figure things out. Back in the day, during the summer, children were shuffled outside and you saw them at lunchtime, and then you saw them back at dinner time, and then you saw them again when the street lights came on. They had to be inventive and play games and be outside and entertain themselves. But so much, we see a lot more kids are not outside. They're not being creative. They're not figuring out things to do. They're not doing that dramatic play. They're not engaging themselves in that. So we have kids who, some are becoming depressed because they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't have that feelings or emotions to be able to go find friends, to go find things to do outside. Sad to the environment, but I totally remember being excited for it to get dark so we can chase lightning bugs. And then, unfortunately, I know now it's kind of cruel, but you would be ripping off their lightning body pieces and putting them on yourself. I don't know if you did it, but you had the diamond ring because you put one on your wedding hand, or you could make a bracelet with it around your wrist. I mean, I feel so guilty now of all the bugs that I destroyed. But, you caught them in a container and then let them glow. I remember catching them in mason jars. The bad thing was I don't think I remember to always let them out. So then you woke up to dead bugs because, of course, I didn't give them any air. But we were outside doing things, adventures, riding bicycles, getting exercise. And many children today, spend a lot of time inside on electronics. So be thinking about how much time is my kid giving or doing to build their mind, to be able to be inventive, to be able to do things on their own and spend that quality time outside, learning to enjoy themselves and the other people around them without having to be on electronics. All right. So talking about feelings. So how do we do that? Well, we do want to ask your children how they're feeling, right? So we want to ask things like, how was your day? What happened today? Like I said that before, being able to have those, let's talk about 2 good things that went well and something we wish went better, really gives your child a chance to discuss how they're feeling for the day. Be listening to what they say, especially with that what could have went better, so that you can hear them and then offer advice to them. So you should be able to summarize what they say. It's not one of those things where you ask the questions and you go about your time, right? So, and a lot of times we're asking them to stay off their phones. So being mindful that we should be engaged with them and off of our phone as well. So it's not this, how was your day today? Yep. Oh, yeah, that sounds kind of stressful. Uh-huh. Right. So we are showing them it's not important because we're engaged in our screens. And then when we want them to talk to us and get off their screen, they're like, but wait, that's not what you do. Right. So modeling for them the way that we should communicate with people. Are we giving them eye contact? Are we giving them the respect to being able to be heard and understood? I want you to avoid telling your child how they should feel, right? So talking about a situation and they say, I was really sad, your comeback shouldn't be, well, that's not something to be sad about. We don't want to tell them that their feeling or how they felt isn't valid. We would want to say things like, well, what made you feel that way? So helping them to understand. And if you really truly believe it isn't valid, helping them to understand the other side. So maybe they are overreacting. But you don't want to say that to them because that's not going to make them feel like you care or you're concerned. So maybe talking about, well, what if the situation was like this? Or what if the situation was like that? Or even asking, how might the other person feel? So that they can talk through what they're thinking. You can always read stories and talk about the characters' feelings to just get them to understand or relate to feelings. There's some great library resources that we can put out there on discussing feelings. And then helping your child recognize feelings in others. So that empathy piece, that's really important for them to understand someone else's feelings that they're talking with or discussing, because it's not all about them. Excuse me. Oops. All right. So encouraging children. We want to give your child a positive attention for expressing feelings in an appropriate way. So those positive feelings, even if they're having some negative feelings, if they're expressing them in appropriate ways, we want to give positive attention about that. And then being able to say, I'm really proud of you, or you did a great job for managing a difficult situation. So maybe they were put in an uncomfortable situation. I do want to give a pause here. Sorry, my chair is falling. Ugh. To talk about managing difficult situations in that tween and teen age. So it's really important to relay some of the things that they're going to be up against, right? So that tween, that middle school and high school age, they're going to be introduced to things like sex, sexting, so talking about sexual things over text. In the great world of Snapchat, often kids are encouraged to send their body parts to each other. And it's not appropriate, right? So being able to talk with them about things that are appropriate and not when we're looking at technology is really important in that age. I also like that role playing. So if you're put in this situation, what could you say? right? So being prepared ahead of time is so helpful. So if they get in that situation, they don't have to try to think about what they should say or what they could do or what's an out. So, discussing those situations with them. I will always tell my children, you can use me, right? You can always say, my mom is crazy. Do you want her involved in this? I'm okay with that, right? If that gives them the out they need, then I want them to be able to say that. This is an age where we see a lot of bullying. So, how are they able to manage that and discuss it? How are they able to work through it? How are they able to get that to stop, right? Maybe they're embarrassed to go tell a teacher. Maybe they're embarrassed to tell someone else. And even worse, maybe the teacher doesn't really recognize it as bullying. I've unfortunately seen some teachers say, oh, that's just kids being kids, when they say something very hurtful or rude or inappropriate to a child. And it's not okay, right? It's not acceptable to say, oh, that's just a kid being a kid. That's boys being boys. They really like you if they do something inappropriate to you or hit you or hurt you. That's their way of showing how they like you, right? We're not promoting those types of behaviors. If you like someone, you can tell them. You can treat them kindly. We don't hit, hurt, or do anything for attention just to be like, oh, I like you. And so as parents, we shouldn't encourage that or support that type of behavior. What we don't want is our children to do is to see a pattern of abuse and saying abuse is a way to show love, right? So if we're saying when kids are in grade school that it's, oh, he hit you or he pulled your hair or he did these things to you because he likes you, then we're teaching that young child to grow up thinking that that negative behavior means they love you, right? Same things. Girls shouldn't be, hurting others, and it doesn't matter the sex of the child or the person they're doing it to, right? We don't condone mean behavior to show that we like them or a positive feeling. So think about that and talk through that with your child. It's also a time they're going to be introduced to drugs and alcohol, right? So how do we help them to get out of that situation, to have conversation, to have rules and boundaries about that? We live in a college town. And it's so ironic that teenagers can have parties and have lots of alcohol there and never had to have a fake ID, didn't have to have someone older go buy it for them. And you're thinking, well, how is that? So you just tell everybody, hey, go get 5 or 6 beers from your parents, their beer fridge, stir up still a beer here and there, hide them until we have a party. Especially during football season or tailgating season, there's open coolers all the time that children have access to. Often we put, it's not just a beer cooler or a alcohol cooler. A lot of times sodas or, Capri Suns or other things could be in that cooler because we only had one cooler and we have to keep so much cold, right? And so it wouldn't be anything to take the drink you're supposed to and a drink you're not. Nobody's really monitoring those coolers for the most part in those situations. So be thinking about that as you're thinking about being at those kind of events, having your kids having access to that, and really working through that. It's a time that kids are really introduced to marijuana, introduced to popping pills as a way to get high. And so having those conversations, you may be asked to take this. How do you respond? So talking through those situations, talking through that you don't take pills from other people if they offer them to you because you don't know what it is, then you shouldn't take it. If someone tells you, oh, this is going to make you feel like this, or it'll give you a high, but it's really quick, your parent won't know, really talking to your kids about you don't know the dangers of what they're giving you and how it might affect you and your body. It may affect them in this way, but that doesn't mean it's going to affect you the same manner. So just being upfront and honest with your kids. It's one thing to say, don't do it, right? Okay, they probably know that you feel that way. It's another to say, don't do it and here's why, right? So, weed is legal. Why can't I do it? Well, here are the things that might come that's maybe negative from it, right? You might, no longer be able to get up for school in the mornings. You may get in trouble if you're doing it on school grounds, like just really going into conversations about why it's not the best idea for them to do versus just don't do it because I said so and I'm the parent. So dealing with the problems. When we're using consistent discipline, and consistent is the key word there, you're able to acknowledge their feelings. You tell your child what to stop doing. You give a brief explanation. You tell your child what to do instead, and have some backup consequences if needed. And then model some better ways of expressing your feelings. So when you have consistent discipline, it's much easier as a parent to give a consequence without your child coming back at you, right? So I love the statement, the rule is, and you will, if you ever meet with me, you will hear me say that to you and give you that advice, right? So if the rule is we sit on the couch with our feet to the floor, yes, that takes away laying on the couch. Yes, that takes away some other things. But if you have a child who jumps on the couch and you say no jumping on the couch, and they want to annoy you or get a rise out of you. So what happens when they're crawling on the couch, right? Or rolling on the couch or hopping with one leg on the couch? They didn't break the rule, right? So why are you getting on to me? Why are you trying to punish me? That's not what you said. You just said no jumping on the couch and I didn't jump. So if the rule is our bottom is on the couch and our feet are on the floor, then that takes away the ability to do something different. And so if they're not sitting on the couch appropriately, you would ask, what's the rule for sitting on the couch? You are breaking that rule. If you do that again, then I'm going to give you a consequence because you know the rule is to sit on the couch on your bottom with your feet on the floor, right? So that gave consistent discipline. You were clear. They knew what was expected of them. And then if they break that rule, then you're going to give a consequence. So if they're like, I don't want to be in trouble, you're like, but you chose to break the rule, right? It's on them now. You chose to break the rule, and my job is to discipline you. And if you don't want me to discipline you, then you shouldn't break the rules. But the ownership goes back to them and taking responsibility for doing the things that they should not be doing. And then if they're really angry and maybe talking to you in a negative tone, you talk to them about how to express their feelings. You don't want to get in a yelling match with them because that says, hey, yelling is acceptable and he who yells loudest may win. So we want to talk to them in a calm and a respectful voice. We want to use words like, again, you broke the rule. These are your consequences. This is what was expected of you. But we're speaking to them respectfully. And we're modeling the way that we want them to speak to us. All right, that third building block, building a positive outlook. So having a positive outlook means you're thinking optimistically. You let them be curious and have exploration. And, it can also involve contentment. So we want them to think positively about things. So looking at things from the glass half full side versus the glass half empty. And encourage them to ask you questions and being able to explore what if. So what if this happens? What if that happens? And then allowing them to be content with the situation that they're in. So with our teens, a bad breakup, right? So we're going to talk to them about optimistic thinking. So I know you were really in love and your feelings are really hurt, but most people are able to find love again. It may not be soon. It may not, happen as quickly as you want, but, there's someone out there for everyone that trying to be positive about the situation. Curiosity and exploration. So, what does a good relationship look like? They may even ask, well, how was your relationship? Have you had a bad breakup? And then letting them be content. It's okay to be sad about a situation. It's okay to be upset about a situation. What's not okay is just to sit in it forever, right? So letting them go through that phase of being disappointed that their relationship didn't work out, but then helping them to be able to move forward. And that's just an example of stuff. But, that middle school and high school age, breakups happen often. And so having a way to discuss that with them and getting them through it can be very positive. So then if we're talking about our littles, they often have things that make them upset, right? So they can't find the other superhero's leg that popped off. They can't find, things that they're looking about. So being optimistic and saying, oh my goodness, what did we do with it last? Where did you have it? I'm sure we can find it. Or let's put him away for the day, thinking about the man whose leg we can't find. Let's put him away for today so his leg has a chance to show up and we can probably play with him tomorrow. Or we'll be able to look for it. Or it's a good time to say, this is really hard that we can't find things, but maybe if we start putting things where they belong, it'll be easier to find them. So really helping them talk through it again. That curiosity and exploration, we see that with littles and play. So giving them the opportunity to explore, thinking about little kids in the kitchen, how can they safely help you cook? How can they safely help you clean? Maybe putting dishes away, learning how to set the table. But they're curious in the adult world of how adults do things. And so allowing them to be able to explore and play in it, very important. And again, that contentment, letting kids be able to sit in when they're sad. I know you're disappointed we couldn't go play with your friend today. They're not feeling well. And so the kid's really sad and they're really upset and saying, I know that, but hey, let's work through it, right? So they got to learn how to be content with things when it doesn't work out well. Those are just some examples of that. We want to encourage optimism. So model being optimistic. If you are negative Nancy and you're always talking about how things don't work and you hate your job, you hate your spouse, you hate when somebody calls, oh, here's such and such, you're talking about your neighbors. If that's the kind of person, your kids pick up on that, and that's how they begin to express themselves as well. So model being positive and optimistic. Encourage your kids to set goals, whether that's your littles to your bigs, right? Your littles, you may be encouraging them to learn how to kick a ball, to be able to build things, build a tower. So we're encouraging them. With our olders, we're looking at maybe you want a job. What's it going to look like for me to be able to allow you to have a job? Maybe they're looking at career exploration, getting a job, being able to look at college or after work life. What is that going to look like? So setting those goals so they can start working on them now. Encourage that initiative and creativity. With our littles, it's encouraging free play, letting them color, do things in the world, play with blocks, play with all kinds of things. And again, and with our bigs, it's helping them take the initiative, learning to take the initiative of things, right? So I wouldn't be on you if you would take the initiative to clean your room or pick up the trash or do some things, right? Maybe creativity, try a new sport, try something new. Maybe you have to take art because you need a fine arts class, but try something that you may like. So just asking them for that creativity and trying to find themselves and take the initiative. Encourage activities where your child will experience success. So if you know they're really good at kicking the ball, maybe you encourage them to take soccer so that they can, score a goal or be really good at passing the ball and everybody's excited for them. And show your child has control over events. So when they're going to go out, they have control over themselves and their bodies. And that may lead to how an event shows up. So if you have a child that really struggles keeping their body to themselves, talk about, how that might look at a birthday party before you go. So when we go into the birthday party, these are the things that we're going to be able to do because this is what we have control over it. And we may not have control over our friends, but this is how we can react. And then point out what your child does well. So again, when you see them doing good things, give them positive accolades. That goes for our teens as well. I have a child who doesn't answer the phone when they are driving, and I think that's wonderful, and I commend them all the time. It's disappointing if I wanted them to catch them before they got home to get a bag of ice, but I also respect that they know their own limits and boundaries, and they have some attention and distraction problems, so they just don't take the chance. And I appreciate that, and so does my insurance, right? And then talk about the good side of things. So the good side of them, the good side of a situation, things like that. We kind of mentioned it just a minute ago, but also encouraging that curiosity. So encourage your child to decide what to do, whether that's events, sports, who they're going to play with, encourage them to make decisions. Let your child explore and show interest. We kind of talked about with the littles in the kitchen. Maybe it's time you're going to plant a garden and you're going to let them pick out plants, and you read about how to grow plants and what a plant needs. So you have to water it. Maybe you're picking leaves, but you're really showing them how to do things. And they're exploring that because it's an interest that they have. Be available when your child wants to show you something. So when they're little, that's all the time, right? Look, mom, watch me do this. And they're just like hopping on one leg, and you're like, okay, that's great. No, mom, watch this now. And watch me do this. And watch me do that. And at some point you have to say, okay, now mom is going to do this while you do that, right? Because you can't look at everything. But as our kids get older, making sure we make the time if they really want to participate with us and show us things, that we're available to them. Ask questions about what they show you and make comments. Oh, that looks like you spent a lot of time with that. That's really great. When kids learn to color in the lines. Oh, wow, I'm really proud of you. I know you took your time and worked really hard, but just be genuine, ask questions, make comments, make them feel like you are supportive. And then teach your child how to find more information, right? So I don't know how to do this. Well, let's figure it out. Being able to go to the library and get a book, or being able to watch a video about how to do it. I will tell you, I am the most Googling, YouTubing. I'm going to fix something in my house because I don't want to pay somebody to do it person. So, I feel like that's a way to find more information. I take a chance on whether I can do it. Most of the time it's worked out well. Sometimes it hasn't. But teach them what are the ways that they can find more information. They can ask you, they can ask someone, in our age of Google, we can get a book, we can watch a video, those kind of things. So how does your child find more information? And then again, we talked about that contentment. So modeling being appreciative and grateful of things, really highlighting, like if someone does something for you that they didn't have to, that we are grateful for someone caring enough to do something for us. Saying thank you for things. That sounds like common sense, but some of those morals and values seem to be depreciating, and kids have an expectation of, well, this is what you should do for me, or you must do this for me. So just model that appreciation and gratefulness. Ask about the day's highlights. We've kind of talked about that. Have shared family experiences. So, sometimes you can talk about, remember when we did this, or remember when this happened. A lot of people share holidays, birthdays, things like that. Being able to discuss other people's point of view. I kind of talked to you about that, helping your child understand how someone else may be feeling in that situation, or trying to help them see how someone else might have felt, or how they made someone else feel. And then discuss accepting things that can't be changed. These are the rules. This is what we have to do. This was important with kids in mask, right? So in order to go to school, you have to wear a mask, whether you want to, or there are people who may not have approved of that, whatever the situation is, right? This is what has to happen in order for you to be able to go to school. So we have to accept things that we can't be changed, and accept rules that can't be changed. Encourage involvement in meaningful activities. So maybe that's a club, a sport, something at home. Maybe you guys focus on, a craft, and everyone's involved in it, but finding things that are meaningful and being able to do them. And then encourage your child to slow down and take in the world. So what does that mean? Like, stop moving too fast, enjoy the things that we do. As we get to that tween teen age, like being okay acting their real age. They don't have to act older to impress other people. They don't have to talk in a certain manner. There's a lot of pressure to know certain things or do certain things. So really helping them to understand it's okay to just be you and take in the world and enjoy things. All right, so talking about coping skills. So coping skills look like problem solving, that positive self-talk, talking back to unhelpful thoughts, relaxing mentally and physically, and asking for help and support. So let's break these down. So problem solving. So make sure you set a good example, right? You help your kid learn how to look through the pros and cons of things, to figure out what's going to best work best for them. Playing games that promote thinking. So having some family game nights, having some things that make your brain think about what comes next. What would you do in a situation? Things like that. Encourage your child to find the answer. So don't just give it to them. Help them work through the problem, and help them to come up with a solution that's not you giving them the solution. So even if they're like, well, I don't get it, I don't understand, prompt them to work through. Maybe you give them a little piece of it and say, okay, well, what comes next? And then congratulate them when they're able to solve a problem on their own or they're able to work through it, and involve your child in family problem solving. So, involving your child in family problem solving can look a little bit like this. I really support having family meetings. Looking at starting your week, I like family meetings on Sunday just so we can take a look at what the entire week looks like, who's involved, who's on first, who's on third, what's going on, right? A lot of family functions. There may be blended families. There may be families that, on certain days go with one parent or the other. And so touching base with each other on a Sunday or whatever day that starts your week with them and saying, what does our week look like? Are there any things at the same time? So if you have multiple kids, maybe people have to be somewhere at the same time. So talking about, hey, we're going to have to leave early to be able to get everybody where they need to be. If there's problems in the family, so let's say we're having struggles with people keeping their rooms clean or things like that, that we say, hey, what's this? This is a problem in the house. People aren't keeping their room clean. They're not doing their chores. How can we solve this? What's the expectation of the house? So family meetings are a good time for everybody to come together and discuss what's going on in the household and problem solve together. And then, so you're thinking problem solve together. Well, what's that look like? So here are kind of the steps. So what's the problem in the house? So we're going to just define what the problem is. It may not be in the house, but what's the problem that we're trying to work with? We're going to discuss some solutions. We take all solutions, right? Good, bad, indifferent, ridiculous, whatever. We take them all. And then we evaluate those options. So we talk through, is this a good choice? Why is this not a good choice? We really kind of work through it. And then decide on the best solution. We'll put a plan into action. So what does that look like? Who are the players? How does this play out? We really talk it through. And then we come back and we review it. Did this work? Was this a good plan? What can we do differently? So, we don't just say, oh, that's it, it didn't work. We come back and revise it until it does work, or we decide it's not going to work. We need a new option. So those are the steps of problem solving. I'm building positive self-talk. So the littles usually have it. They're like, look at me, look, mom, look, dad, I did a great job. Look how good I did. The watch me's. Our little kids usually have good positive self-talk because we're praising them a lot. We're saying good things to them. Sorry, my poor watch broke and it just fell off. But we're evaluating their achievements, right? We're having them look at their own achievements and evaluate that. And then we're explaining how thinking is different, ways that affect how you feel, what you think. And then we prompt the child to think about what others might think or feel, point out helpful or unhelpful thinking. So if they're only thinking about the negative, we may point out some positive things, or we might point out, well, what if this goes wrong? What are some things that could go wrong and how could you problem solve through that? And then, we must model that positive self-talk and cope with stress. Some of the things that we do in that teen stage is we talk negative. We sometimes don't think about the things that we talk about in the car. So maybe we're using that social time of driving them around to talk to a friend, and we may say things that are helping us vent, but maybe not things that are appropriate for the kids to hear. And they pick that up, right? And then they may talk about it themselves later to someone else, and maybe you don't even want them to. Positive self-talk to cope with stress. So how can they figure it out for themselves? How can they work through it? How can they find a positive way to deal with stress in their lives? Finals coming up is a good point. Have you studied? Have you the study guide? Have you attended class? Did you make notes? You can do this. What do you need to be successful? I'm helping them to learn their best test taking strategies, or how do they need to take a test? During the pandemic, and we were home, one of my children had to make sure that they didn't have distractions in their room. Their phone was turned off. They had a quiet place to think and focus. So helping them be able to work through those stressful times and being positive about it. And then helping children to relax. And it's not just children, we all need to relax. So what good ways do we manage our stress, right? What are our coping skills and strategies? How do we find ways to relax? And some examples of that are taking some slow, deep breaths, relaxing their muscles. So you may do, as the little kids, let's relax ourselves. So we're gonna roll our head. Can I see you roll your head and neck? Look at mom. Close your eyes. Do like this. Now let's roll our shoulders, right? Let's stretch our arms. Oh, big stretches. Really showing them how to relax themselves. You may look at yoga videos, some of those relaxation videos, and you may listen to relaxing or calming music as well. And then looking for support. Discuss that everyone needs to talk and everyone needs support sometime. Where can you get that support? So giving them suggestions of who is a good person to talk to, whether that's a close family friend, one of their own trusted friends, a school teacher, a counselor, things like that. All right, so that fifth building block, dealing with those negative feelings that we might have. All children have negative emotions. Even as littles, we hear the I don't like you, the no's, I'm not listening, up to our bigs, right? They may have some negative self-body images. They may have negative talk about, feeling negative if they haven't passed their test or they're doing poorly in school. And so we can't always protect children from these feelings, but we want to help them understand that negative emotions come and that a lot of those emotions pass quickly. And we want to help them to assist and prompt them in the problem solving through those negative emotions and learn how to resolve those negative feelings on their own, right? We want them to be able, when we're talking about littles, we talk about learning to self-soothe, right? So you don't want to always have to come in and pat your baby on the back, or you don't want to come in and have to put them to sleep. You want them to learn how to self-soothe. Well, that really kind of goes up until they get older and out the house. We want them to learn what makes them feel better, how they can soothe themselves and their emotions in a positive way, right? So we don't want them to think drugs and alcohol, sex, and those kind of things are ways to work through their negative emotions. We see that with teens when they're not able to come across ways to resolve. If their parent hasn't worked through negative feelings and how to work through and problem solve through that, then they may turn to some of those other things because someone at school has said, oh, this is what helped me. When I was down and depressed, I just smoked weed and it made me feel better. Side note, there's uppers and downers in weed and the kind that you get. So it may not be, it could be a truth, but we don't want that to be like, well, okay, well, I guess I need to start smoking weed as a kid, right? That's not what we want. We want them to find other positive ways to work through negative feelings of their own. All right, managing their emotions. So starting to notice when your child is upset, asking what's wrong and listening and talking to that with them. If you have those tweens and teens, they often say, nothing. They may want to talk to you, but you might want to just say, hey, the door is open. If you kind of have a glimpse of what it is, maybe you say, when I was your age, I went through something similar. If you want to talk about what worked for me or what helped me, I'm willing to. So, opening the door for conversation. And then if they do choose to talk to you, again, having that eye contact, being present with them, acknowledging their feelings, asking what they want to do. So helping them problem solve with what the answers they want, what is the outcome that they want to see, and helping them to how they can get to that outcome if it's realistic. And if it's not, helping them to understand that their outcome isn't realistic and why. Prompt that problem solving If they're still upset, tell them, hey, let's take a minute, let's cool off and think about it. Calm yourself. Maybe we can talk more later. Then maybe there's a better time to talk, something like that. We may see this with our older kids, that cooling off time, if something just happened to them at school or online. you know, um, Kids are really big and bad behind a computer screen. I guess the same with adults. A lot of people now will say something on a computer screen or on FaceTime or something like that that they wouldn't say if you were face to face. So helping them to stay calm about it and helping them to be able to talk about it later. Preparing for emotions. So help your child learn to cope on their own. For example, with anxiety, you could set a good example. You could talk to them about what anxious feelings they may have, what it feels like. Then teach them some coping strategies. So how do we work through it? When you're feeling anxious, you may do this. Encourage facing fears gradually. So, we'll slowly work up to it. We'll build in coping skills, and then maybe we'll try again. Helping them to stay calm. Again, prompting those coping strategies. What strategies do they have that they can put in play? And then praise them for at least trying and the efforts that they're give. And then we always want to talk about, and I mentioned this before, those dangerous situations. So what if you're pressured to have sex? Maybe they've been in a relationship for a while and they feel like that's what's next. Talking to them about that situation. And maybe that you're also prepping them for that situation, right? We're talking about the fact that they may get pregnant, they may get a STI. It's I instead of D now, because things are infections versus disease. We're talking to them about making sure that they're not pressured or pushed into a situation, and if they are, what's their next step. So talking about situations in all their and all their ranges can help your child really work through a difficult situation. Again, those last things I was talking about with that tween and teen situation. Don't think your kid, just because your kid isn't doing it or involved in it, that you shouldn't talk about it. Because once you realize it's an issue, it's probably too late and they've already been faced with it. So finding appropriate times to talk about things that could come up ahead of time, and then giving them strategies to work through it or get themselves out of that situation is very helpful, because you don't know when they're going to be faced with it. And then the last one, dealing with stressful life events. So some examples of that might be change, problems with their peers or friends, disappointment in a situation, unpleasant experiences that they might have. Maybe it's a loss of a friend or a parent or a family member, something like that. A parent separation or a divorce. Maybe they're joining a new family. So we may have some blended families happening, adoption. Maybe they were removed from their home and you're their foster family. So being able to talk about how stressful these life events may be. We may have trauma or a serious illness, like a parent could be hurt in an accident, or anybody could be hurt in an accident, or having a serious illness like cancer, and talking through that with them. Of course, we have natural disasters and terrifying experiences. So those are some stressful life events that could happen. So coping with those events. So allow your child to be upset and be able to work through those emotions. Again, we kind of talked about, just don't let them sit in it and stay in it. Talk about what happened. Try to find something positive to be able to say or discuss about it. Reassure your child when that's appropriate. Don't feel you have to solve the problem. Be able to engage them and have them help problem solve with you. And then maybe you can suggest something to cheer your child up. Encourage use of those coping skills you talked about, maybe reminding them of those coping skills, and let them have a break and check back in with them. And then help them to be able to seek advice if the problem continues. So it's okay to need a counselor. It's okay to talk to your school counselor. It's okay if we get, a private practice counselor. Side notes, you could check with FACE, the Family Access Center of Excellence. If you live in Boone County, they're giving away those 6 free counseling sessions. So that may be a good way to get your child's feet in the door and let them discuss some things with someone else besides you. Maybe they don't feel comfortable talking with you, or maybe you are the problem with them. So having them be able to talk to someone else could be helpful. Some other things, like if you're going to have a move, explain why the move is necessary. Familiarize your child with a new situation. So don't just bring it on them. By the way, next week we're moving, right? They need time to be able to adjust and accept the move. Maybe make plans with friends, things like that. Talk about the advantages, why you want to move. It's a better area. Maybe you've got a better job, but help them to understand like why this is happening. If there's not advantages, sometimes it's being honest with them. So if you lost a job and you can no longer afford that we have to move because our finances have changed and I have to be able to afford a roof over your head, right? So get your child involved. If it's a way, having them look at the house you're going to move to, maybe you talk about, hey, when we move in your new room, we can do this, but try to get them a part of it so that they feel like they're part of the move. Maintain a routine as much as possible. So even though maybe you're going to move and it's going to be stressful, that you're still making sure you do your bedtime routine or your morning routines, things like that. And then help your child find ways to be in touch with friends. Another example, dealing with a loss is the situation. So consider your child's developmental level. So where are they at, that you can have an explanation to them about what's happening. Reassure your child where appropriate. Encourage appropriate expressions of feelings. Provide information. So the library is a great resource has great books about talking about dealing with loss. Maintain routines as much as possible. That just gives them consistency and things that they can depend on and believe in. Arrange a child care if the loss affects you. So maybe if you can't be at your best, have some time where your child can go with another responsible adult to give you a break, to give you that time to manage your emotions. Being able to talk about feelings, coping, or memories. So if it's a loss of a parent or a grandparent or things, being able to talk about how it's affecting the whole family. Talking about times that we're happy. Do you remember when we did this with grandpa, or we had this family outing? Being able to bring up good memories. And then again, seek advice and support. So, talking to a counselor, seeking advice of friends for them. Maybe someone else has dealt with it and you choose to meet with them so that they can give some support. So that's an example of dealing with a loss. All right, checking the time here. So our take-home messages. We want to be our child's friends, but our job is to also be the parent. So making sure that we're setting rules, we're setting boundaries, we're sticking to them. We're being respectful in our conversations that we're having. So we're not having adult-like conversations around children where it's not appropriate. We're also making sure that we're checking our child where appropriate, right? So they shouldn't be talking back to you. They shouldn't be interrupting you. They shouldn't be, telling you how to run the household and what they are and aren't going to do. Helping a child learn where their place is, and helping them to understand that you're the parent and they're the child, and these are rules and boundaries that we have. Realizing as children get older, they're going to be looking for more independence. So ways that you can help them give that independence, but still being respectful to you. So setting some rules and some boundaries. An example of that might be, when kids start to drive, what's the rule about communication? Do you need to know where they're at all times? What's the rule about going somewhere else, changing location? Who's allowed to be in the car? I had a rule of you shouldn't be at someone's house without their parents home unless that parent and I have had a discussion and it was okay between the two of us. And if I found that that happened, then of course you may have been grounded or I may have taken your keys. But setting rules and boundaries so that you have expectations. Again, when you have those rules and boundaries and you're consistent in your parenting, it's easier to give consequences and for the child to accept those consequences because they knew what was expected of them and that they didn't follow the rules and that they didn't work through those things. Making sure that you're trying to be friendly with your child, and you can say, I am their friend, but you want to be careful to understand that being a friend means you're not equal, right? You are still the parent. You still set rules. You still set boundaries. In that teen years, sometimes I say my parent's my best friend. Well, that's great, but I also want to make sure that you can discipline your child when necessary, and that they'll respect you enough to take that discipline and work through that discipline. With our littles, we're helping them to learn that, you can say no when asked. Do you want an orange? No. But it's time to come to lunch. No, I don't want to eat. That's not appropriate. So helping them to learn how to be appropriate with their words and the things that they want to express to you, working through those things. A lot of parents think when they have a lot of rules in the house and they have a lot of structure that their kid may not love them as much, they may not bond with them as much. And the truth of that is that children really appreciate rules and boundaries because it helps them to know what's expected. you know um, I've worked with some children who had absent parents, right? The parent worried about themselves. The parent may go out with friends, and one kid said to me, gosh, it would be really nice to know that I would have dinner or I would even know what I'm supposed to eat for dinner. Cause sometimes I would get in trouble for eating things I wasn't supposed to. But then if I didn't eat, I got in trouble for not eating. And then sometimes I just didn't know what I was supposed to do. And it was really stressful for me. So, having those conversations as little as what's for dinner, what's going on for the weekend, what's the rules? Again, that what's the rules is so important from our littles to our bigs. When kids understand what the boundaries are, it's easy for them to maintain and work through them. But, making sure that we're expressing our love for our children. A good time for that is really that when they're little, that bedtime routine. So you have a chance to snuggle with them, you have a chance to read to them, you have a chance to talk to them when it's quiet. It's a great bonding time. With those tweens and teens, sometimes it's, sitting on the couch watching a movie together, playing family games. I know there's some feelings about TikTok and if that's appropriate or whatnot. We'll do a session maybe on talking about the safeties of electronics and things like that. But maybe there's a lot of families who have been doing TikToks together, as long as you're setting appropriate boundaries and rules on using that app. But spending time with your kids and bonding with your kids is what will help to for them to feel loved and respected and want to spend that quality time with you and feel like they can have that bond with you. But it starts with communication, consistency, rules, and boundaries. All right, I am going to exit out of that.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. That was lovely.
Yeah.
Does anybody have a question for Catherine?
Oh, I see things in the chat, which I could not see. Was that just you?
Yes, I put faith
Okay.
in there for people and the next workshop and the link to the survey for this evening and your email if they would like to reach out to you personally with questions. And if anybody has any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will get to them.
I will also say after our last event, my email had to migrate. So there's some people who said, hey, I reached out to you, didn't hear back. And I was like, oh, so sorry, never got it or saw it.
Oh, no.
So I just want to say, if you've ever reached out and I haven't reached back, please do it again. It wasn't purposeful. I might not truly have gotten the message.
So technology, yay.
Yes. So please try again. I'm happy to work with and through everything.
Great. Well, we've got your email in there. We thank you all for coming tonight. I'm not seeing any questions in the chat. This was recorded, so it'll be up on our website in a few days, and I will email all registrants so that they have a copy of it if you want to revisit some of Catherine's slides and her information. So thanks a lot for coming. We hope to see you in May for the next workshop.